And Sal, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Well, as I tried to explain to Lauren earlier, I'm big on 3x5 cards and that kind of stuff. It's very old school, um, and I have one that is my mission statement for my classes. This, and I wrote this many years ago. It is for the classes to be interesting, entertaining, and enjoyable. And of course, as I thought about how I would do that, I decided, well, you're going to need to use a lot of videos. But I seriously, I really rely on the videos to support what it is I'm saying, so that again, what I'm saying isn't original to me. It's what I've read or what I've seen through documentaries, so that you can get a kind of a condensed version of all that material into something that hopefully is understandable. But so a lot of it is stuff you might consider controversial, but remember, I'm just the messenger. Today, I really am disappointed that I don't have my video, because I made what I consider a great graphic. And for those of you who have experience with my graphics, thank goodness you're muted, because we don't want to hear you laughing. But I do, because they're kind of my graphics are sort of like a Rorschach test. There's something mentally wrong with this guy. Anyway, I have one that it is to highlight Trump, Epstein, Putin, and the connective tissue between the three of them is money laundering. That's the key element, money laundering. And my theory of this whole case is that it was the head of the FBI office in New York, Assistant Director of the FBI, Kallstrom, who I believe was the obstacle for opening investigations that should have been opened in the 1990s. If you recall from our class last week, one of the FBI people said, I wish I had opened an investigation. And I, I take that to mean I wish I had gone to the mat to fight the agent who is in charge of the FBI office to demand that we have an investigation. And why do I say that? We have Donald Trump, who has been a troubled, truculent young man from birth, who has a lot of privileges, a lot of advantages. He and so he has a family, has a lot of money. He has very few constraints on him, and he is so bad they have to ship him to a boarding school because he's disruptive for the rest of the family. So he grows into adulthood, again, never having anything to modify his behavior. Mind you, I would argue that he had psychological dysfunctions that needed professional counseling, and he never got it. And so, another one of my theories is that when someone is suffering from a mental disorder or mental illness, malady, that if it goes untreated, it is not going to go away. It's not going to change. And it will get worse as they get older. So along comes Donald in the 1970s, and his father, who's been very successful building apartment buildings in the borough of Brooklyn, creating a good business He has a good reputation for standing up, for his word is honorable, and he has a good business, and he's getting very, very wealthy. He helps get Donald his first opportunity to be a developer, and that is with a hotel in New York. But mind you, he's going into New York because Donald does not want to have what his father has, which is a cash cow that just keeps delivering money, and it makes for a great life. But Donald isn't happy with that. Mind you, no matter what happens with Donald, he is never satisfied. He must embark on some other project, and he has to go and borrow money to do it, even when he is bankrupt. And so you say, well, when are you going to learn your lesson? He's never going to learn his lesson. He needs professional help. So Donald goes and he does that project in New York, and he then is going to go and take on a more ambitious project, and that is Trump Tower, buying the Bonwit Teller building, tearing it down, using uh, people who are non-unionized and are immigrants from Poland, not following the law, not following safety rules, all of that stuff, total violations of the law. That's Donald. He's just going to plow ahead and do what he's to tear down. He has to make a deal with the city that when he tears down the Bonwit Teller building, he's going to retain some of the artworks that are on that building to give to New York's art museums. But he doesn't, because it will cost money for him to do that. And since it's an agreement that he made, Donald has to show I don't have to fulfill whatever it is I promise. He's the complete opposite of his father. So Donald goes ahead and he builds Trump Tower. He does so by going to lenders, getting funding, and he creates this thing. And over time, he sells condos, apartments in the building, and you could say, okay, you've now made your splash in New York, and you're functioning, but he runs into trouble making payments on the interest that's due. But that doesn't slow him down. He then decides, I want to build more. And so he's going to make a deal with a Russian development company, to do a joint project that they're going to develop the Soho project, which is in Midtown Manhattan, right near the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel. It's a horrible location for something like that, but that's where he chooses to go. And for the Russians who are joining with him, it's important to understand that they are taking illegal money that they looted out of Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they are now putting it into a development. No one is tracing the source of those funds. And so they build this project, right, with the idea that as we sell them, and it doesn't matter how long it takes to sell, selling condos in this development, apartments in this development, that when we sell them, we'll get our money back. Only now it is laundered money. So so this becomes a project for money laundering. He's having difficulty making the interest payments with Trump Tower, yet he's embarking on this other project in Soho. He also decides he wants to get in on the action in Atlantic City. And so he embarks on developing properties in Atlantic City. Once again, he's doing it with other people's money. This is analogous to the person who overextends their credit card, says, I want to dress really well. I want nothing but custom clothing. And I want to drive a Porsche. And I need some really expensive gold chains around my. And so the person spends all this money that they can't afford, run up their credit cards to the max, run up their personal credit to the max, and then they can't pay it back. So, but Donald does it on such a scale, such a huge scale, that banks are still willing to lend him money because for them, the, their circumstance is such that if they foreclose, they now have a half built property in Atlantic City that no one's going to want to take because the casino license doesn't go with the property. So the banks, for them to have any expectation of getting any money back, they have to restructure Donald's loans. They have to lend him more money so he can make the interest payments that he hasn't been able to meet. And essentially, they make real the old cliche, if you're in for a nickel, you're in for a dime. And so they continue the ride with Donald. Donald, even though he has this financial structure around him that isn't very good, he is not satisfied with one casino. He has to have two and then three. And he has people working for him who know the gaming industry very well and know how to run a successful business. And they advise against it. They understand they're in a market. There's only there's only so many customers to go around. We're going to be competing with ourselves. We're going to be siphoning off our own customers. It's too, you're going too far. You're putting too much supply into the market. And of course, he goes bankrupt. And now he's stiffed all these people, and he hasn't, in some of his other past projects, contractors didn't get paid. Um, he has. Oh, look at that! Internet came back on. Maybe we'll do something. And so uh, he's a deadbeat. Banks won't lend him money anymore. And so, yes, he is embarking on new projects, looking for new loans, going to foreign banks because he can't get loans from American banks. So he's going to Deutsche Bank. He's going to BTA in Kazakhstan. He's going to Credit Suisse. I mean, he's going to banks that are well known for money laundering. And so my argument is that there was more than enough cause to investigate what is the source of this money that's allowing you to go on, even though you're broke. So, as I've said in the past, when we look at an event in history, an event today, how did America get to where it is today? It's not about one thing. It's not about the election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's financial problems. It's not just one thing that makes it a mess. It's the convergence of other events. It's other things that are going on that seem remote and far away. But when you examine them and you see how they fit in the puzzle, they are essential for making that event, whatever it is, happen. The attack on 9/11, everybody jumped to one end. They just don't like us. They are jealous of what we have. It's because of their religion. It wasn't because of their religion. It was because of multiple things that when you looked at all of those multiple things, they were far more significant than differences in religion. But you can only understand the event if you're willing to put the analysis into it to find what is at the root of it all. Now, while this is going on with Donald, the Soviet Union is collapsing. Soviet Union collapses in the early 90s. They try a new form of government. Transitioning a government from state-owned businesses to privately held businesses, it's not like flipping a light switch. It's a huge undertaking, which is why under Yeltsin, they looked to consultants to come in and help them transition to a free market economy. Mind you, there was a free market economy in Russia. It was called the black market. This is where the oligarchs come from. It was all illegal, underground, but it existed. And now to make the state-run industries be run by the oligarchs, organized crime is not easy. And so Boris Yeltsin, who's there for the transition, he's an alcoholic and he's failing. He's near the end of his life. It starts to do okay for a while, but Yeltsin loses control of it all. And what he has is a KGB guy who knows how to nuzzle up to him. And Yeltsin then hands off the throne to Vladimir Putin. And Putin is a guy who is very committed to Russia being an international power. And he is deeply resentful about America asserting itself as the international power and America asserting itself to be the consultants to Russia for how to transition to this new system of an economy. Now, it's as I've said before, anything with Russia, anything happens under the dark cloud of the world wars. Previous classes, I showed the graphics that highlight the number of Russians killed in World War II, exclusive of World War I. It was a bloodbath. It was a horror. It creates generational trauma. It gets passed from one child to the next child. And it's not going to be, just the generation that comes after the people who lived during World War II. It's going to go on for a long time. So anything that has to do with America is seen through the filter of World War II. Remember, in World War II, our ambassador to Russia, Avril Harriman, every year had to go in for a meeting with Stalin, who was practically begging to have a second front opened. They are on the edge of being destroyed, and they want the pressure taken off by England and the United States entering the war and sucking off some of those Germans. Mind you, at Stalingrad, the Russians are reduced to cannibalism to survive. They are on the very edge of existence. And we keep saying We're going to provide you with all the weapons. We had lend lease. That was it. We're gonna get. You know, it's almost like I showed in a class on the war in Afghanistan where we wind up killing this old man's grandson, and we go to negotiate compensation. This lieutenant is saying, "Well, look, we'll give you $10,000 as compensation." I mean, the idea that that is going to compensate for his grandson. I mean, it expresses an American thinking, what is projected. Doesn't mean every American thinks this way, but there are many people in the world who think the only thing that matters to Americans is a greenback. Life is not important. Humanity is not important. That's how they look at us. And so the Russians really come to see us as the most evil thing there is. And now, when they're going through transition and we are going to help them in that, they don't believe it. They don't believe it. So Putin becomes the face of that contempt for America. And he's a KGB officer, and he knows how to manipulate and how to wear a mask and how to play the suspect, the target for his needs. And so when they do transition, these state run industries that have never really been valued are now going into the free market and getting a valuation for what they're worth. Are they making money? Can they make money? All of that. And so the oligarchs know these things are going to be worth a lot of money because look, we were the black market. We know what can happen with the exchange, changing goods for rubles, right? They know that. They know the power company isn't charging what it should be charging, and they know that there's a lot of money to be made. And so, and by the way, Western investors, American investors, English investors, they also know that there's a lot of value in the state-run industries now being privatized, and we want to get a piece of that. So what happens is those businesses get put up for auction. Putin is the guy in charge, and he's going to control how that all happens. He is going to select the oligarchs who are going to be able to bid on these things and win the bids. There will also be other people who get in, some American investors, which we'll talk about. But what we have is Putin is control of it, and it's if you go back in our American history class, remember George Washington? His brother was the head of the Ohio Company, and that what the Ohio Company was to go and as U.S. militia forces or whoever kicked Indians off their lands, the Ohio Company would then go take those lands and auction them off. They would buy it from England would say, okay, these Indians lands are now ours, and we're going to auction them off to land speculators. That was the Ohio Company. They would buy up, and then they would sell parcels. It was the same thing. That is what Russia is doing now with their state-run industries. They are now going to auction them off. And so they do. And the oligarchs then wind up getting, they now own, let's say the Southern Company that was valued at $100 yesterday and now is valued at $100 million. And so they can then take that and use it to translate that into money, into cash, into rubles. But these rubles um, that they're now going to take and they're going to extract from the country, um, they are not very well valued, and they're now it's considered dirty money because it's from looting the companies that they're now running. It may sound complicated, but that's what it is. And so they now have this dirty money and they want to clean it up. Do they want to clean it up through Russian banks and that sort of thing? No, no. They want to get it into the West. They they don't believe in the ruble. They want the U.S. dollar, and so they're looking for places where they can launder their money. There are Western banks, but there's also the United States is the top place to go and launder money. And so it's the convergence of that with Donald Trump in a real estate business and casino business, which are well noted as money laundering businesses. Again, just those two things together is enough for me. The FBI guy who led organized crime for the Russians, for the FBI, said, for us to open an investigation, we need a nexus. We need something that is a predicate to do an investigation. There has to be a merger between this problem and some criminality, and then we can investigate. I just think when I look at multiple bankruptcies of a guy being broke, going off and getting loans to do more projects and more projects, there's a lot of nexuses there, more than enough to have opened an investigation. Um, and as we talked last week, and I'm hopefully going to be able to show you before the end of class, the director of the assistant director of the FBI who ran the New York office, and what he has to say. I mean, mind you, with just that information right there that I talked about this morning, there is enough for an investigation. There is no police person, investigative person who could look at that and not say, yeah, we need to open an investigation. And when you open an investigation, that doesn't mean that you're going to convict. It means you're going to do a preliminary investigation to see, is there probable cause to think there's something wrong here, that we can then do a full-blown investigation. Investigations go in stages, and so you'd at least do the preliminary, but not Kallstrom. Even after the connections with the Russians in the election of 2016, he thinks that Comey and the rest of them are just go. I don't even understand them, he says. We'll hear that. Now, we also come to Jeffrey Epstein. What was it that Epstein did that got him a lot of money? He starts out, he's a smart guy, and he's good at math, and he gets into college, but he doesn't finish. And so he drops out. He then goes to New York University, signs up there, doesn't finish, he drops out. Probably an attention deficit kind of problem. Again, the sexual stuff is really driving him crazy, and he gets a job with a prestigious private school in Manhattan, where the the chancellor, I think he was chancellor, is William Barr's father, and he's a bizarre character, and he's one who came out of the intelligence services of World War II and went on into his career. But he is now the headmaster at this private school, and even though the school has, very high, they pay their faculty very well. They get the, really cream of the crop to teach at their school. Bill Barr's father likes this guy who has a Brooklyn accent, dresses, out of the norm of what would be a typical teacher at this school. He, for some reason, and Epstein is a manipulator, so, and he knows how to suck up to people, and so he falls victim to that, and he hires him. He hires him, and that puts Jeffrey in a position to be around young girls, children, and he does some things that are inappropriate, and he gets terminated. But he decides he's going to start a consulting business and investment consulting business, and somehow gets connected with the guy who's at the top of Victoria's Secret, who also runs other retail women's clothing stores. And so he has, a large organization with access to a lot of young women and models and that sort of thing. And Jeffrey becomes his financial advisor, and the guy signs over everything to him, even the largest residential property in New York, which is on East 71st Street in Manhattan. Just signs it over to Jeffrey. And Jeffrey now, through Wexler, gets connections into other wealthy people who Wexler refers him to, and he starts developing a client base as he's advising them on their investments, and he gets a lot of money, but it's never enough. So he also gets into the money laundering business. And so and Donald and he become, best buddies, uh, BFFs, best friend forever. So the connection between the three of them comes in the form of money laundering. Uh, and I do want to show you this. Let me see if I can do this. Uh, because it's a good take on Kallstrom, and then we can open up for discussion. So forgive me for a minute. I'm going to drop off and then come back on. This is one of my favorite graphics. Do you see, Epstein money laundering, Russia, Putin money laundering, Trump money laundering, and then police political corruption? Money laundering is what tie them all together. Is that not a great graphic? You can applaud. No, don't applaud now. We'll do it later. Okay. So let me get. I'm sorry.
Everybody's so starstruck they don't know what to
I have
say.
to humor myself every now and then. So, and I actually worked on that graphic a lot. Let me get back to this one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Visual video skip.
Back to the deep state drama and the FBI. I want to ask the following question of someone who knows.
Okay. Do we have the video up?
No, we don't. We have Trump laundromat.
I know what I did. Okay. Sorry. Let me get this straight. That's the one. Okay.
The answer, and that it.
All right. Now we have the video.
Yes, there we go.
Is this. is the FBI probe of leading politicians totally and hopelessly politicized. Come on in, please. James Carlstrom, former FBI Assistant Director. He's always had something to say about this. What are you going to say about it now?
Well, you know, Stuart, for over a year and a half, I think, we've been talking about this sort of reverse crescendo. We started off with Jim Comey and all these crazy actions that I thought were outside the main of how the FBI should operate. And now we come to this, you know, this focus on, you know, the fifth estate that I've talked about, you know, that includes multiplicities of people. Well, now we know it also includes a bunch of sycophants in the FBI, you know, that were part of the Comey team, apparently, and people in justice also, that I believe have exposure now for obstruction of justice. I mean, people, yeah, people tweet each other and they send text messages, but they don't plan. The FBI is not in the business of planning to destroy a president of the United States. I mean, and it's clear to me that that's what they were. I think they were. I think they were trying. I think they were way above their capability. You know, this guy thinks he's the Lone Ranger, this Peter Strzok. He's going to float in here, and if by any chance Trump gets elected, which is a catastrophe in his mind. I mean, I don't know what his mind is thinking. Obama basically destroyed the country. Now you have a guy that wants to fix it. Okay, but anyway, if that's his thinking, you know, and they were obviously, from the words that we saw, they're in Andy's office plotting some kind of thing. And I think that some kind of thing is what we're seeing right now. And we've seen for the last, ever since he's been elected, we've seen this facade and this phony challenge to Trump about collusion in Russia, which nothing could be further from the truth. All the collusions with the Democrats. And it's very, very depressing to the FBI. Well, the FBI agents, I mean, 99.9% high-working, patriotic guys that come to work and girls that come to work, you know, for the good of the country. And you've got this cabal of people, you know, you've got this deputy director who should have been out a long time ago for his actions. And then you got Peter Strzok and who knows how many others, you know, and you got Comey with all the phony stuff that he did. And, you know, but I think finally we're going to get to the end of this. But the big mystery here is the Justice Department. What is the Justice Department doing? What is the Attorney General of the United States doing? You know, it's too bad for Donald Trump, who's I've known for a long, long time. And with all his little things that he does that people don't like, his policies are what's going to bring the United States back globally, in my view. Yet, you know, you have this huge storm of people that are just putting roadblock after roadblock. It's a mystery to me why he hasn't called over to the Attorney General and told the Attorney General, give the oversight committees the documents they're looking for. Why is the Trump Justice Department not complying with subpoenas from the Justice Department that want to look into this thing?
I want to summarize this. I want to be very clear about it. I have said, in my opinion, and it is an opinion, there is a cabal active within the FBI and the Justice Department,
Yes,
which hates Trump,
yes,
which protected Hillary Clinton,
Yes.
tried to bring down Donald Trump.
yes.
And that is an extraordinary story of interference in an American presidential
Yes,
election.
it is.
You're agreeing with me on this?
Oh, yeah, and we've been talking about this in different.
Yeah, but now it's out in the open. Now we're saying
without question, that's what it was. Yeah, just like the whole so-called Flynn investigation was phony from the beginning. We've talked about that. No grand jury, giving witnesses immunity, putting all the subjects in one room at the same time. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's nuts what they did.
Look, James, I've got coming up on a hard break, but I want to ask this question. You've got 20 seconds. What's morale like in the F?
Okay, well, I think you get the point of all of that. And let me take it. Oops, stop the share. Okay. We can open up for discussion.
Okay, everybody. You may use the raise the hand function. I didn't get a response to this when I asked the group while you were gone. Did you say that Bill Barr's father was a part of this nexus of people?
No, that his father hired Jeffrey Epstein with virtually no credentials and and everything. I mean, mind you, this is this is like in the 70s, right? And I mean, it, totally unqualified person. But it was his father who gave him a job at this exclusive private school.
So Bill Barr has known of Jeffrey Epstein forever,
Yes, yes,
forever.
yes. And that's the thing is that, all, we're learning now about a lot of this stuff. But if you were in the world of New York City and law enforcement, I mean, you have to know this stuff. It's here is this Jeffrey Epstein who suddenly is in the largest residence in New York, and he's bringing young girls in and out and all of that. Come on, they know it. They know it. There's more than enough to want to open investigations. Oh,
Well, and I find it frightening that not only do they know it, but 2 and 3 generations later, the same people all still know it.
right, right. Look, the Kallstrom is talking about how bogus all this stuff was and how it's a cabal out to get Trump. At that point, we already have evidence of the Russians interfering in the election. We have documented that a KGB agent was meeting with Paul Manafort to get the campaign information. I mean, this is, I mean, it's not like they just made it up. They have specifics things. They have clearly Trump obstructing justice. Not why didn't Trump just tell them to cooperate? Well, somebody got to tell Trump to cooperate. You know what I'm saying is that it is so out there that for this guy to be on, Fox News castigating Comey and Strzok and all the others, to me, that says you've been compromised because it doesn't stand up to reason. And I'm not saying that the FBI should have gone out and arrested him. I'm saying they had more than enough to open an investigation long before any of this happened, long before, the Russian connection happened. There was more than enough to open an investigation.
Well, and of course, anybody that wants to join in, please use the raise the hand function or drop something in chat. But not only have they known, but a lot of the people that are connected with all these people have a lot of money. So it is their
Right.
best interest to keep this all under wraps, as it were.
Mind you, Trump and Epstein hire private security, right? Private security is often a police side agency, right? If you want the Atlanta police to provide security for a parade, you call the Atlanta police. You get shifted over to the commander who handles all of the security contracts that they get. So Epstein had police officers, providing the perimeter protection for his for his house, for his home in Mar-a-Lago, for his when they had 13-year-olds trying to escape police officers were capturing them and keeping them on the property. This is, and I'm not talking about something that just happened yesterday. This is long ago. This is, the 1980s. I mean, it's pretty appalling.
It is indeed appalling. Uh, Susan, I'd be interested to hear your um, perspective on this, in that you have worked with young people that have gone through trauma, and how the forces of um, uh, you know not the forces that keep the whole thing together are keeping all those people under wraps.
The individual is traumatized, and we've worked with girls from rape camps, um, girls that were trafficked in Eastern Europe during and after the Bosnian War, and children who were the babies born from the rapes. So the orphanages, we worked with the orphanage staff of these children. The trauma goes on. It's definitely, they will try to find ways to live, but the trauma is there. It never really gets healed. Um, I think the hope is that they can interact with people to show them a different model and to give them some sense of, uh, it can be better for my children. Most of them are stay hidden. Most trauma victims try to stay hidden. So
And I have to think that the people that are controlling all this are keeping them traumatized, because that keeps them under wraps.
yeah, I mean, this is a societal illness. Um, and I have to say, it falls at the feet of men, and how women raise little boys and fathers teach their sons. It is, I watched men who didn't want to kill their best friends, adult men sitting in groups in Bosnia, who would have a close friend who happened to be in the same group, who had agreed to come to the same group because they were both teaching in the same system. Remember, I was working with teachers. And these men would start opening up after a week with us, and in group process, began to weep openly and saying, a monster was unleashed in me. I can't understand it. But it was also fed by a system of politicians who were very wealthy and very smart.
And that, if I'm reading you right, Sal, that is very similar to what we're seeing here.
Absolutely. Those young women who have, or now adult women who've banded together to have the strength and courage to come out, even though things may have happened to them 30 years ago, they're still laboring under the wounds. And their comfort can only come if they see justice of some kind. And that's what we promise in America is justice, right? And we are seeing it tested big time right now in our pushing against democracy. But the only balm of hope for women, and I'll speak because that's what we worked with in Bosnia, except for the male teachers who had so much to say about this and live with guilt of not saving, of participating and not saving their families, their children. And they became hypervigilant with regards to other men and suspicious of all men, by the way. That was another thing that kind of like, wow, this is interesting. It's a societal issue that if you want to change, you have to find a way, the society, you have to find a way to control the impulses. And I have to say that I came to believe that religion was a tool that we used in that way, um, creating guilt, sin, guilt, putting them outside the social circle, shaming them, even if they were all doing the same thing. But this was something, they could point to with what it was said in their religious doctrines. But I am telling you, it's like those women who have come together to stand up. And I hope there's not any that are also wounded coming in to participate, but they weren't under Epstein. It wasn't Epstein, but they're just so upset because they were traumatized and abused by their own family members. It's a big movement, I believe. It kind of started with the Me Too. It's going deeper now. And women have to be really responsible in this, in controlling their anger and the emotional triggers that will leave them into becoming perpetrators of something else as victims. But because I have seen that happen too.
Wow. Thank you.
Hi, yeah. One of the things that I have noticed very recently is the actions that are being taken in the UK about the Epstein files. And nothing is being done here. I mean, it's pretty disgusting to, that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm just
Yeah. No,
Shame is a valuable tool in the UK. It still works there. Shame?
Yeah, well,
We have no shame
apparently.
here. This is like children are not ashamed of misbehaving or disrespecting elder. The rules that we kind of once thought was how the stuff that held us all together. Shame was one of them.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Look, the in my overall working in criminal justice is to say that the things that control us the most are informal. They're not codified into law. They're the norms and mores of our society. And when those break down, we're in deep trouble. Yes, we need formal laws, but we have to also make note or try to enhance those informal controls because they're the more powerful of the two. And shame is certainly one of the informal controls. In another anecdote, in Detroit, when they had the riots there in '67, whole neighborhoods burned to the ground. There were streets where nothing happened. Researchers, sociologists went in and interviewed some of the people from the neighborhood. Why didn't you do anything on this street? Oh, that's where Mrs. Forbes lives. We're not. See, there were people that they wouldn't act out like that for fear of offending, of Mrs. Forbes thinking I'm a bad boy. Those are informal controls. And I've worked on programs in neighborhoods that were horrible, and they bring me in to meet with the community and talk about what can we do to try to salvage this place. And I'm telling them, you have to get to know the people in this neighborhood. These kids that you say are driving you crazy, you need to establish a relationship with them. And this one guy said to me at the end, he said, I came to this meeting wanting to know under what conditions can I go out and use my gun against them. And now I'm going to go home and put together a plan for making a barbecue for these kids. That neighborhood is a good neighborhood today. It took a while, but it's different. it's easy to be hateful to someone you don't know than it is to be hateful to someone you do know. That's why whenever I'm driving and someone does something horrible, I don't make any gestures. I first want to catch up to the car and make sure it's somebody I don't know. You know, those things are very important. And when we look to justice to intervene, we have faith in our justice system. When it breaks down, when it fails to do its job, I'm not talking about just, you can't blame them for everything, but I'm talking about the stuff that's obvious right in front of your eyes. Raping children. My God. That's a breakdown of justice that is way beyond that. That shatters not only the people who are the victims, that shatters the society. Who would have imagined we would have federal police assaulting our cities? We've come a long way downhill. And it's not just one thing, it's multiple things that are happening. Multiple.
It doesn't sound very hopeful. Like how do we turn this around, I guess is what I'm saying. It's like this is really big. And as you've pointed out over and over again, the forces of money are working against solutions.
Right.
I find this analogous to an alcoholic or drug addict who must hit rock bottom, whatever that is, and finally say, okay, I have to change. They're not going to change. They're not going to get help until they hit rock bottom. You can counsel them, 24 hours a day. Ain't going to happen till they hit rock bottom. America has to hit rock bottom. And my argument is that in rebuilding, we need to deal with a real history of America.
Yeah.
If you want to be proud of America, address the things that you did wrong. What is it the alcoholic has to do? The alcoholic has to recognize who they've offended, and they have to genuinely go forth and seek redemption. If we felt, I know I'm on my soapbox, but if we felt our country confronted its ugliness and sought to redeem itself, if we really did make restitution to the Native Americans and the African Americans, and when I say Native Americans, it includes all those Hispanics that we think, are illegals. If we really did, we could honestly look at our country and say, we are bigger than we thought we were. We are better than we thought we were. We faced up to it. Yes, go ahead, Susan.
Do you think it's realistic to consider a real coup here?
Yes.
Is there enough power on the side of you and me, people like you and me and the rest of the population that we saw have fought like hell in Minneapolis alone, and also California, where Newsom stood up? I mean, have we got enough critical mass in this country to basically come to a place of possibly a coup?
Yes, I believe we do. I believe the elements are in place and becoming stronger as time goes on. The we're I mean, it's heading towards a civil war.
Yeah.
Is where it is, and I think when we come up to the election, and there will be much more go on from the Trump administration to crush that election, that could be the breaking point. There can be others, but that's what's on my radar now, and has been for a while because I felt that's where they were going. And yes, that could lead to a coup. It could lead to a civil war. It could lead, look at it could lead to Berlin 1945.
Yeah.
And that was rock bottom. Germany, it took many years for Germany to dig out from under the rubble, but they finally did, and they were honest about it. So, and honest about their history. So, the problem with that is that's long after our lifetimes are, I mean, the time that it takes is so long, it's not going to be a quick fix, and it'll be outside of our lifetime.
Does anyone else have anything before we wrap up here? Sal, did you tell us about next week yet?
No, because who knows if we have internet or not. No, what do I forget what I have next? Next week we're gonna really get into how the Russians penetrated the Trump organizations. We're gonna look at
And I have to think still live there today.
we just think what?
And I say, I think they still live there today.
Yes, yes. But you're going to see, I mean, they bought up a lot of floors in Trump Tower. That was part of the money laundering game. They ran a casino. It wasn't a casino. It was a gambling operation just a few floors below Donald's suites.
They broke in through the front door.
I mean, no, anyway, we'll get into that next week. Sorry we didn't have the videos today, but I figured I would be able to talk for at least an hour or 5 without, it's kind of like, I give you those videos to give you relief from me.
You're so kind.
I try.
Yes.
Okay, everybody. Well, be safe.
Coming.
We'll see you next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you all.